Okay, people. I'm going to follow up my breakdown of the Dbq rubric from the 2020 exam because I think what's really important as you kind of prepare for this is understanding how to best use your time to work the rubric, okay? In other words, how can you maximize the amount of points that you get in the amount of time that you have? You have 45 minutes to read through 5 documents and crank out a solid essay. Not an easy task, but it's definitely doable if not only you are familiar with the rubric, but understand the easiest points to get. Now, when I say the easiest points, I mean they are intellectually in your brain going to take the least amount of work, but also going to take the least amount of time and or space on the page. Now, remember, you have unlimited space to write, more or less, but you're not going to have an unlimited amount of time, so you're only going to put together probably what would amount to a 3 to 4 page single-spaced handwritten essay, though you're going to type it, just to give you a frame of reference here. Okay, so let me reiterate real quick, and you might want to be following along with the Dbq rubric, which again I have linked on PSL. You are going to have a very difficult time getting points on this essay if you don't have a thesis statement. We've talked about this all year. On the previous Dbq rubric, you could only get a 2 out of 7 if you did not have an argument or a thesis. Now, you can get a little higher score, but it's really not much more than that, okay? So as I read this rubric, and my eyes are on that rubric right now, you can still get the contextualization point without using a thesis. You can still get evidence point number 1, okay? And you can still get, let's see, that's it. 2 out of 10. Yeah, I promise a 2 out of 10 is not going to be a great score on your AP exam, so you're probably going to want to really practice the thesis writing. Now, that's not an easy point to get, but it's a very doable point because we've been practicing it all year. I'm not going to spend time on that in this video, nor am I going to spend time on contextualization. Contextualization is the only other point besides evidence point number 1 that you can get without a thesis. That's going to take several sentences to get, and I think you are all capable of doing that, but you need to practice. Again, you want to watch the rolling credits at the beginning of any Star Wars film to understand what contextualization is. We'll talk more about that perhaps in another video. For now, I think the 5 easiest points to get after you, and this is based on the assumption that you have a thesis statement. The 5 easiest points are those evidence points, okay? Evidence point 1, again, is using the content of 2 docs. If you can't basically summarize 2 documents, and I'm talking like a sentence, maybe 2 sentences per document, and demonstrate to the reader that you understood what document 1 and 2 were, I mean, like, what are we doing here? You shouldn't be in the class, okay? That's an easy point, okay? Another 2 easy points, assuming you have a thesis. Remember, evidence point number 1, you don't need a thesis, but 2 other points that are very easy to get are evidence points 4 and 5. Those points are your outside evidence. Now, it's really important that you understand that you cannot get outside evidence points in your contextualization paragraph. Those are separate. You also are not clearly able to get those points in your attempt at analysis and reasoning point number 3, which is your complexity point. So I would instead read through the docs because this is outside evidence. Evidence not included in the documents. I really understand what's in the documents to get these points. And then again, 1 to 2 sentences, some other fact that you can pin down in either time or place or a specific name, something that is related to not only the topic of the prompt, but your argument. You have to connect this to your argument. In fact, the scoring says that you are going to use the response must describe the evidence and must use more than a phrase or a reference, and it is designed to be relevant to your argument about the prompt. So you have to have an argument to begin with. Your outside evidence has to connect to that argument. It can't just be a random historical fact that happens to be in the same time period. For example, if we're looking at our imperialism DBQ on PowerSchool, a lot of you got your outside evidence point by mentioning Cecil Rhodes and the De Beers Diamond Company and how they used whatever to exploit the resources to get diamonds and all that. Some people mention the Corvée laborers building the Suez Canal. Fantastic. That is not in the documents. It's relevant to that document or those documents. It's relevant to the topic. It's probably going to be easily tied to your argument. But you can't, so this time period is 1750 to 1900. You can't be like, oh yeah, and Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Well, it's in the same time period. That's an accurate fact. It's evidence, but it's not evidence for this prompt. It's not evidence even remotely to your argument. So I would very cautiously include random little factoids that you happen to have rattling around your brain. The reason I say that these evidence points are so easy, though, is because you've done so much reading and note-taking and content review that you should have some information going around in your brain related to your argument that tie in to this prompt. So throw in 2 of those, you get 2 points, right? And remember, you already got 2 because you didn't have a thesis, right? You had your contextualization evidence point 1. That's 4 right now. I'm going to tell you, you're probably going to get the thesis because I trained you well. That's a 5 out of 10. Now, that's 50%, but for those of you who haven't been paying attention, that's not going to be a failing grade on the AP exam. That will most definitely be at least a 3 or higher. I'd probably stay in the 3 range just to be safe. So the next easy points are evidence points 2 and 3. These are using not all of the documents, but using 2 points. So 2 documents to support your argument gets you evidence point number 2. Using another 2 documents, so that's 4 total for those keeping track, 4 total gets you another evidence point. So you can get 5 evidence points, and then with your thesis, that's a 6. With your contextualization, that's a 7 out of 10. And you haven't done any analysis or reasoning. Look, people, between you, me, and the trees, if you get a 7 out of 10 on this DBQ, the chances of you getting a 4 are very, very strong. I would be shocked if that's not a 4 in terms of translating that to a score. Now, the other points, the capping points, your analysis and reasoning point number 1, your analysis and reasoning point number 2, and then your complexity point, analysis and reasoning point number 3, those are difficult, but they're doable. I've talked in other videos about how to get evidence point, or excuse me, analysis reasoning 1 and 2, so I'm not going to go into that here. I'll do another video about analysis reasoning point number 2, but suffice it to say, if I'm working the rubric, I'm going to spend the bulk of my time trying to get those 5 evidence points and assuming that I know how to do my thesis well and assuming that I know how to do my contextualization, because we've trained on those for a very long time. People, I have all the faith in the world that each one of you is capable of getting a 7 out of 10. You got to practice, and the most important element of that practice, not the most important, but one of the most important elements is going to be timing. Work on your timing, put a stopwatch on, 45 minutes, 5 documents. You can do this. More to come, people. Have a good one.